Originally titled Seated Woman and subsequently renamed by one of its 19th century owners. The Valpinçon Bather was painted by the French neoclassical painter Jean-Auguste-Dominique Ingres in 1808. During that time, he was studying at the French Academy in Rome. The Valpinçon Bather is a female nude in a chaste pose. In this graceful nude, with its perfect balance of intimacy and grandeur, of detached contemplation and enchantment, Ingres has masterfully depicted a calm and measured sensuality of harmony and light. At first glance, we may only see the back of a nude woman. But if we look closer, this painting lacks the overt sexuality of other Ingres paintings. From the curtains to the tassels, folds of the bedsheets to the curvaceous forms of the bather's body, there is a lot of different types of elements of composition, and they all play a role in creating what is surely one of the greatest back views in the history of art. Born in 1780, Ingres belonged to French neoclassical period. He was born in Montauban, France, the first of 7 children. He was the student of Europe's leading painter Jacques-Louis David. He grew to be one of the giants of 19th century French art. Ingres' father, Joseph Ingres, was a successful jack of all trades in the arts, a painter of miniatures, sculptor, decorative stonemason, amateur musician, making young Ingres receive early encouragement and instruction in drawing and music from him. Ingres' style was fully developed in his early years of painting in Paris and would change little for the rest of his life. Created in 1663 in France under the reign of Louis XIV, Prix de Rome, or popularly known as Grand Prix de Rome, was a French scholarship for art students, initially for painters and sculptors, which was later extended to architects, musicians, and engravers as well. Winners of this first grand prize would be sent to Académie de France in Rome. It was an annual bursary which allowed promising artists to stay in Rome for 3 to 5 years at the expense of the state. Ingres competed for this Prix de Rome in 1800 and 1801. He won the Prix in his second attempt for his The Ambassadors of Agamemnon in the Tent of Achilles painting. But due to shortage of state funds, it was not until 1806 his residence in Rome was opened for him. Once he set his foot in the Academy in Rome, Ingres had to send several works back to Paris as required of every winner of the Prix, so the authorities could judge the progress and could make sure that prize winners were making good use of state funding. Traditionally, fellows sent paintings of male Greek or Roman heroes, but for his first samples, Ingres sent 3 paintings. A painting of the back of a young woman bathing based on an engraving of an antique vase, and La Grande Baigneux, a larger painting of the back of a nude bather. And to satisfy the Academy in Paris, he also dispatched Oedipus and the Sphinx to show his mastery of the male nude. The practice of painting nude, especially the female nude among painters, has been observed for years, with an emphasis on the time man has perfected the illustration of a realistic human anatomy. It is a celebration of the feminine sensuality as well as the illustration of the artist of the ability to render realistic anatomical details. Many renowned and accomplished artists have created their own rendition of the female nude, and the pose, it allows the painter to see the nude subject's body in a way that reveals the body's contours, evokes the sensual, even sexual features and representations of certain anatomical parts. Valpinçon Bather is one of the earliest paintings of Ingres that reflects the influence Italy had on him. It depicts a nude female with her back turned to the viewer in a domestic scene, but it captures the artist's style of allowing women to be portrayed with a little extra weight as a more realistic depiction of the beautiful female body, which was not preferred in the early 19th century. She has what Baudelaire termed as a deep voluptuousness, wearing a simple wrap around her hair and a plain duvet placed over her midriff, with a red sandal lying forgotten by her side. She is the sole subject of the work and is framed by the stunning tapestries that highlight the arching curve of her back, adding a touch of class to elements of the background, while there is no mythological reference serving as the pretext or an excuse for her nakedness. She simply sits on a comfortable bed with a dark green curtain framing the composition to the right, along with the mystery of the model whose face cannot be seen. The use of light colors, except the dark curtain, helped to bring out the lightness and softness of the nude woman, exposing her flawless back. Ingres painted the fabrics and details in the portraits with extreme precision and accuracy. The eye of the viewer would perceive the fabrics as realistic and would assume the face was equally true, which was idealized. The broad area of the back creates a set of majestic abstract forms, but at the same time conveys the flexibility of living flesh. Ingres always stressed the primacy of drawing over color, but in fact, he often created ravishing color effects, as in this glorious expanse of golden skin. The Bather's face is only partially visible, so attention is drawn all the more to her striped headgear. The first Ingres model to wear a turban, a detail he borrowed from the Fornarina by his favorite painter Raphael. Turbans had appeared in European paintings from the 15th century, and in Ingres' day, they often appeared in a vein of art called Orientalism. This term describes the fashion for imagery inspired by the Near and Middle East and North Africa. Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798 was a catalyst for the fashion, which flourished in several European countries. Some of Ingres' other nudes are more obviously in the Orientalist tradition, depicting odalisques. The smooth, tense contour of the left shoulder epitomizes Ingres' idealistic approach to depicting the female body. All the angularities and irregularities found in real life, indicating the presence of bone and ligament beneath the skin, are replaced by a serene flawlessness. Elaborate folds of white drapery are wrapped around the Bather's left elbow. We may think Ingres included the drapery here purely for pictorial reasons, to soften what would otherwise have been the pointed outline of the elbow, and to provide a contrast of color and texture with the Bather's skin. Ingres was a superb painter of draperies. Here, the curtains, with their dark color and deep folds, help emphasize the unruffled perfection of the Bather's skin. There is a black marble column at the bottom of the curtains. Ingres has signed and dated the painting on its base. Some contemporary critics said that the Bather seemed boneless and had no ankles. Certainly, Ingres has conceived the forms of this part of the figure broadly, especially compared with the delicate pattern he makes from the sandal's laces. Ingres had an extraordinarily polished technique. One of his best known comments on art is that a paint surface should be as smooth as the skin of an onion. His concern for accuracy and detail is obvious in the impeccably crafted forms of this detail. The firm verticals created by the draperies in the picture are subtly echoed in the curvaceous forms of the Bather's body. Here, line takes precedence over color, but he shows great mastery in balancing the broad masses of flesh and fabric against one another. The only obvious movement in the painting comes from the jet of water gushing from an ornate spout into the sunken pool. Although the setting of the painting is generalized, this small detail hints at some exotic society, distance in time and place. Critics thought that figures such as this were lacking in a traditional sense of three-dimensional solidity, seeming rather bland and boneless. It did not impress them, due to the odd choice of subject for a student at the academy, and also the figures were not enough idealized for them, among other reasons. Ingres, however, looked beyond conventional naturalism and was prepared to modify appearances for the sake of pictorial harmony. He was a superb draftsman and was easily capable of depicting human anatomy accurately when he wanted to. But he had a high-minded conception of art in which the imperfections of nature must be corrected to create an ideal beauty. This outlook was influenced by his main teacher, Jacques-Louis David. Even more important than David, however, was the effect Rome had on Ingres. He was inspired not only by the remains of ancient art, but also by high Renaissance paintings and above all, by the work of Raphael. Thus, in Valpinçon Bather, he is more concerned with creating flowing contours from the woman's body than with suggesting its underlying bone structure. This is especially apparent in her right leg. It is drawn with superb grace, but when examined closely, it appears to have been grafted onto the draperies above it rather than convincingly connected to the body. But nevertheless, around 50 years later, when Ingres' reputation was well established, the work was described as a masterpiece of harmonious lines and delicate light. It was remarked that even Rembrandt would have envied the amber color of her pale torso among many other of its unique characteristics. Starting in 1786, Ingres attended the local school, but his education was disrupted by the turmoil of the French Revolution, and the closing of the school in 1791 marked the end of his conventional education. This deficiency in his schooling would always remain for him a source of insecurity. In the earlier part of his career, his work was sometimes controversial, as it was considered quirky by conservative critics. However, by the time of his much honored old age, he was one of the most revered figures in French art. In addition to being one of the greatest portrayers of the female nude, he was renowned for his paintings on historical, mythological, and religious subjects, and as a portraitist, he produced exquisite portrait drawings as well as paintings. Ingres left a large bequest of work to his native city of Montauban, now housed in a museum named after him. Ingres' choice of subjects always reflected his severely limited literary tastes. He read and reread Homer, Virgil, Plutarch, Dante, histories, and the lives of the artists. This made him visit and revisit a small number of his favorite themes and paint multiple versions of many of his major compositions throughout his life. He did not share his age's enthusiasm for battle scenes and generally preferred to depict moments of revelation or intimate decision manifested by meeting or confrontation, but never by violence. His numerous odalisque paintings were influenced to a great extent by the writings of Mary Wortley Montagu, the wife of the ambassador to Turkey, whose diaries and letters, when published, fascinated European society. Ingres completed the Valpinçon Bather in 1808 and depicted the identical figure in the same pose in his Turkish bath, which is clearly derived from the Valpinçon Bather, although she now plays a mandolin. The environment of the Turkish bath, however, bears little resemblance to the public bathing described by Lady Montagu. But even Ingres could not improve on the timeless balance he achieved in the Valpinçon Bather more than half a century ago. The Turkish bath is an acknowledged masterpiece with an erotic charge that is remarkable coming from an artist in his 80s. Critics often found his style bizarre and archaic. His expressive distortions of form and space make him an important precursor of modern art. His work influenced Picasso and Matisse and other modernists.